Hi, this is exceptions in the straight line. This is question number 4. Identify the slope and the y-intercept of the following equation. And the reason that you might have difficulty identifying the slope and the initial value is because this equation has not been set up in y equals ax plus b. And you cannot read the a nor the b if you don't have the equation set up in this form. And we have to use the rules of algebra, transformational rules, they're fancy words, to say, hey, isolate your y. Make your y be all alone. Sometimes the temptation is to say, oh, well, the a is 4. Look, there's a number 4 in front of my x, and the b is that negative 60 over there. So y is equal to 4x minus 60. And that's the temptation. This is what examiners hope you will do. It is wrong. You cannot do that, because we can't read those coefficients or these numbers, until we've isolated that y. So that's what we're going to do right now. The first thing that we're going to do is take a look at the equation. We're going to do some thinking about which numbers we're going to want to move and which operations we're going to need. And you can see I have a negative 60 that's being, a 60 being subtracted from my y. And so at some point I'm going to have to add 60 to both sides. And you can see also that there's this 4x kind of being at the front here, which is another way of showing that it's being added to that 6y. This 4x is on the same side. It's being combined with it. It's being added there. We don't show the plus, but it's there. So we're going to have to subtract that guy. And then we've got this negative 6 hanging out in front of the y and being multiplied to that y. And we know to get rid of a multiplication, we're going to do a division. So there are three kind of things to get rid of. That negative 60, the 4x, which is all one number, remember, and that negative 6. So I'll do them one at a time, and I'll use red just to show those operations. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 60 to both sides of the equation. I like to get rid of my constant first, the regular number first. It's the easiest one to move. The less thinking, the better. So I'll just put my pen down there. And that will then rewrite as 4x, he hasn't gone anywhere yet, minus 6y is equal to, now that went away. That was the whole point, right? We added the 60 so that that negative 60 wouldn't be hanging out next to the y, but whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do the other, and 0 plus 60 is 60. Next up, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Now, it's very important that you remember, you're not just subtracting 4. You're subtracting 4x, the whole term. This is one term of math, and we need to take the whole thing away. The number and the x, always. So that goes away, but it has an impact on the right-hand side of that equation. And so what's left underneath is going to be negative 6y, right, that's gone, is equal to, now negative 4x with that 60 there, they go together. So negative 4x plus 60. You could write that as 60 minus 4x, but we like to put the x term in front of the constant. So it's just a good habit to get into. Lastly, and some people stop here, but they forget that you've got to get rid of this number as well. The whole thing, including that negative. So we're going to divide that by negative 6. We're going to divide that by negative 6. And we're going to divide that by negative 6. All three parts. And when we do that, we're left with y, because negative 6 divided by negative 6 is positive 1, which we don't have to write, is equal to, now calculator time here, clear that up, negative 4 divided by negative 6, and that gives us positive 0.6 repeating, so I'll just 0.6 repeating. You make sure you keep that repeating. If you want to use a decimal, if you don't like fractions and you don't want to reduce this to 2/3, which is what it would be fractionally, then you can't just round that off to 0.6, because 0.6 is 6/10, not the same as 2/3. You need to keep that infinite decimal for calculation purposes later on. X stays there. Sorry, I shouldn't be writing plus yet. Positive 60 divided by negative 6, just in case you want to see it. 60 divided by negative 6 gives me negative 10. So it's not plus, it's minus 10. So I've isolated my y, and now that the y is isolated, you can see really quickly that the a and the b are very easily identified. There's your a, and there's your b. So to identify the slope, a is equal to 0.6 repeating, and if you're a fraction person, 2/3. And the b, or the initial value, is -10. And you can see right away, the a is not a 4 and the b is not -60. These are your answers. Okay, so the bottom line is use your rules of algebra, isolate your y before you try to read your slope and your y-intercept.